Welcome to the Law School Insider, where we have conversations with students, lawyers, and employers.
Succeeding in law school is something that you must prepare for, not only before you begin, but throughout your law school journey, and that's what this podcast is all about. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Lewis, and I will draw from my over 20 years of experience in the college admission field, as well as bring forth the experiences of others as we delve deeper into the issues. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Law School Insider. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Lewis, and I'm so excited to be able to have you back again this week. Now this week we have a great guest. Jason DeSouza is joining us. He's with DeSouza Law in San Antonio, Texas, and Jason is a personal injury lawyer that is working down in Texas to be able to represent accidents across Texas. And Jason is going to be sharing his experiences, not only in law school, but also in his career that have helped him to find success. I'm really excited to be able to have him on the show and for him to share his journey with you. So Jason, thanks so much for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Lewis. I appreciate it.
Well, I really appreciate you being on the show. As I always do, I love to start the show by turning the clock back in time. One of the things that I would love to have you talk about is really that journey for yourself into law school, and talk to us about what was it about the law that intrigued you, that drew you in, and made you really want to be a part of this crazy profession that you're in.
Well, I went to college in Canada, and I studied a sociology degree. And I had initially started my degree as a business major and then transferred to sociology. And by the end of the degree, I was trying to figure out what I'm going to do next, which I think a lot of college students are faced with. And I had a professor, great fellow, and he referred me. I told him that, I'm on the fence between doing an MBA or going to law school. And I know a little bit about business because I was doing a Bachelor of Business Administration. And he said, okay, well, he set me up with a criminal defense lawyer. And he said, just, hang out with him, shadow him, and see how it goes. So I did for about a year in my last year of college. And I loved it. I loved being in hearings. I loved being in the courtroom. I loved the history of the law. I loved all the case law. I loved the fact that there were problems and issues from several hundred years ago that we are still facing with today, but sometimes we have different solutions. And when I saw that, I knew that I didn't think the traditional corporate MBA route was for me. And I knew that at least I have an interest in the criminal defense portion of the law. And I think that it would be to my benefit to study the law. And that's why I decided to apply to law school.
Now, you decided to attend law school at Western Michigan University, Cooley Law School. You decided to leave Canada to come to the United States. Go a little more into depth about that. What was it about coming to the United States that was a draw for you? Why the United States versus staying in Canada?
Well, I grew up in Toronto, which is a huge city, and it's the financial center of Canada. And I knew that when I went to the U.S., I would get a JD, and that JD would give me more versatility in my skill set as a lawyer. So if I decided to stay in the U.S., I could work for a Canadian firm, and I could be their man of contact. If I decided that I wanted to go back to Toronto, I could work for an American firm with the JD, and I knew that it was just transferable so that I could practice. Even if I wanted to be in Canada, I could still practice in the United States and Canada and have that dual practice ability without going the joint degree JD LLB route that some of the Canadian law schools offer. That's what really drew me to going to a law school in the United States, was just the career versatility and being able to take that back to Toronto if I needed to. And I really did my homework on that. I knew there were a number of firms that had the desire for American JDs with a Canadian passport, for example. I knew that there was a good scope for that, and that led me to applying to schools in Michigan because they were at the time close to home.
Now, I know that going into law school, sometimes there are roadblocks, there are stumbling blocks, there are things that can get in the way of being able to be successful, and making that transition into law school can sometimes be challenging in itself. Now, as you started your law degree, what were some of the biggest aha moments? What were some of the biggest things that were of surprise to you as you were working on making that transition in through to be able to find that initial success?
I think for me, as I said, I did an arts degree. It was a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology. And number one, the structure of an undergraduate degree is fundamentally different than the structure of a doctorate degree, which is what you get from WMU Cooley. And in that structure, there's a lot more work and perseverance and determination that's really required, and hours. It comes in the form of hours. That was the biggest surprise to me because I really didn't find college overly challenging, and maybe my GPA reflected that. When I went to WMU Cooley, that was the biggest surprise to me in the beginning, was how much work is required, how much more I have to improve my writing, how much more I have to improve my research abilities, how much more effort is involved to bring myself up to the level that WMU Cooley Law School expects and has established of its students. And that was the biggest challenge to me and the biggest surprise. It was a wake-up call to me, is what it was. Thankfully, I was able to meet that wake-up call and I was able to excel, but it didn't happen overnight. It took a lot of work to really get there.
Now, as I said at the very beginning, you are working in personal injury law right now. And because of that, I'm sure that there was a process in which you had to go through to be able to identify for yourself that this was the niche area, the area that you wanted to focus on. So what was it about personal injury that was intriguing to you, and what was it that actually made you choose to move in that direction?
What I'll say first is that I know that for a lot of law students, personal injury has a bit of an image problem. A lot of people tend to associate injury lawyers with your standard Saul Goodmans, for example, from Breaking Bad. So there was no initial draw to personal injury. I loved my torts class. I loved Professor Henke. I loved my remedies class. I found it extremely interesting and intriguing. But I think initially the problem was an image problem. Once I got into it and actually had cases, I focused on litigation concentration at WMU Cooley. And when I got out of law school, I went to go work for a tax lawyer who had a general civil litigation docket. So I had some personal injury cases there that I had to. It was part of my job that I had to work those cases. And the first thing that really drew me was the competitiveness that's involved in personal injury. When you're on the plaintiff side, you are necessarily the underdog. You're dealing with some of the largest insurance companies in the world. You're dealing with AIG, Allstate, Progressive, and they have an unlimited amount of money in which to defend their cases. And as such, they go and hire some of the biggest defense firms in the state who have access to, again, all kinds of money in which to defend their case. So number one, I really enjoyed the competitiveness and the resourcefulness that's involved in winning an injury case. In starting a case where the adjuster tells you you're getting nothing out of this. Your client's getting nothing, you're getting nothing, go away, to getting a very, very favorable settlement or getting a favorable verdict. And number two, when I graduated from law school, as lawyers and potential law students know, it wasn't a cheap endeavor. It was very well worth it, but it was an expensive endeavor. And I walked away with a lot of student loans that need to be repaid. And I found that in injury law, it pays very well. If you're a successful injury attorney that works hard, that can apply the work ethic instilled in you from WMU Cooley Law School, you will be very successful and you will make a lot of money. You'll do very, very well for yourself. So those two factors, my competitive drive combined with my desire to do very well and make good money, that's what motivated me, and that's what drew me to the plaintiff side of personal injury law.
I appreciate you sharing that because, I think that you're right. I think that there is a connotation that sometimes comes up when you think about personal injury, and it's always good to hear from people that are doing it and the motivations. And it's always interesting for me to hear about the motivations in general of why people choose to go in different direction. Now, as you look back at your own law school experience and think back in time to when you were there, and now knowing what you know, is there anything that you wish that you would have done differently, that if you could go back in time you would change, or that you would suggest to others to make sure that they do while they go through that law school experience?
Everybody's different, but I think from an emotional and mental standpoint, law school is very, very emotionally and mentally grating. It grates on you, and it can be very, very difficult. And when I started at WMU Cooley Law School, I brought a certain attitude with me, and the attitude was kind of an entitlement attitude. I felt that I found college very easy, and law school should probably be the same. I felt that my grades in the beginning didn't necessarily reflect my abilities. And it took me a while. It took me a long while. It took me about 5.5 terms before I finally developed an attitude of being humble and realizing that you're not entitled to anything and that you really have to work for what you get. And when you work for it, then that's when the success and the accolades follow. But you don't get any of it first. You have to work for it first. And although it sounds like an obvious thing to say, I really wish that I had brought that humble attitude with me from the beginning, because although I understood and learned the concepts academically very well, it took me a long time to get over that mental and emotional aspect of there are students here who are the best, who are gunners, who are significantly better at school than you or studying than you and will get better grades than you. And after I learned to be humble, I experienced far more success at WMU Cooley because being humble allowed me to roll with the punches. And if I were able to roll with the punches from the beginning, I think that my mental and emotional state would have been a little bit healthier. But having said that, experience is the best teacher. And I was able to take that attitude that WMU Cooley instilled in me and apply it to my practice when I got out of law school and understood that you have to be humble from the beginning, and that will then bring success to you.
Well, I truly appreciate that. Now, before we leave today, I want to just ask one last thing, which is if there is any piece of advice that you would give to a student that was looking at law school, looking at going through law school, what advice would you give to that student?
I'd have a two-piece form of advice. It'd be two-part. Number one, I would say that get ready to make sure that you are open to different study habits. So what might have worked for you in high school and college might not necessarily work when you're in law school and when you're in such a competitive law school as WMU Cooley Law School and such a law school that really places great demands on you as WMU Cooley Law School does. And what I mean by that, for example, is that I had a tutor in law school at the Lansing campus, and I believe that he's still in Lansing. And he was fantastic. And there's a number of different tutors and whatever works for you. But I had never had a tutor at any point. I would say that you're open to differing study habits so that the end is success and that you're not closed off to something that may be different to you in the beginning, but will bring you success at the end of the day. And then there's something that I also tell the people that I work with. I have some attorneys that work for me and my staff as well. And it's more of a practical aspect that when you go to law school and when you get out of law school, a common trap that new lawyers face and that I face myself is that you always have to put the client first. It's something that I emphasize on a regular basis, weekly basis, on sometimes an almost daily basis at my firm. And that is that there will be conflicts that you will face as an attorney. And generally speaking, the best way to resolve those conflicts is by always making sure that the client's interests are number one. You can be the best lawyer in the world. You could have graduated with the best GPA and the top of your class. But if you don't put that client first, you will not be a lawyer for very long because that client will find another lawyer or go to the bar or file some sort of malpractice claim against you because you didn't do what was right for the client. And at the end of the day, as lawyers, we're only here for the clients. We're in business because of the clients, and we're here to serve the clients. And it's difficult. It's an obvious concept, but it's difficult to apply in person. And it's something that if you make sure that that is your personal mission and you keep that at the top of your mind when you're working as an attorney and applying what you learn from a great law school like WMU Cooley Law School, you'll be successful as a lawyer. And you'll be able to actually apply the principles that you learned in school to being a great advocate for your clients when you're out in practice.
Well, I appreciate everything that you have shared today. I'm going to put some links in our notes so that people can find you and be able to connect with you a little bit better. And I truly wanted to say thank you for being on the show this week.
Well, thank you. And if I could just add one more thing, that would be that you and I had spoken about this before, but I loved WMU Cooley Law School so much. Number one, I met my wife there. She worked in the admissions department. We met just shortly after I started there, and we've been together since 2006, so 11 years now. And the second thing is that WMU Cooley Law School had been such a great influence and impact on my life and had given me so much opportunity that my wife and I agreed to name our second child after the founder of the law school, Judge Brennan. And my daughter's name is Brennan Clare. and she's beautiful. And so just a little shout out to little Brennan. But that's how much I love WMU Cooley Law School. I mean, I loved it so much, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity that it gave me, and I'm so thankful for what it taught me, and I'm so thankful for what it built into me, that was part of my way of saying thank you back and just respecting the founder of the school, Justice Brennan, for everything he did and creating such a successful institution and giving me, most importantly, the opportunity to become a lawyer.
It's an amazing story. I truly want to say again, thank you for being on. We are always proud of hearing from our alumni and definitely are proud of your success. I want to say thank you for being on the show, and I look forward to hearing more about your successes in the future.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Lewis, and thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. And if I'm always looking for externs, the weather in San Antonio in the fall and the spring is absolutely beautiful, but it's also beautiful in Tampa Bay as well. But I'm always willing to entertain externs from WMU Cooley Law School because it's number one fan.
Well, you heard it again, everyone. As I've said in the past, when people say things like that, when people give you an opportunity to reach out to them, to build that network for yourself and make those connections, definitely do it because you want to start building that network from day one, no matter where you are in your law school journey. So take advantage of reaching out to Jason, reaching out to learning from him, talking to him, and then moving on with your own law school journey. So, Jason, thanks so much again, and we'll talk to you again in the near future.
Thank you.
Well, that was another great guest this week on the Law School Insider. If you have an interest in being a guest on the show, drop me an email at lawschoolinsider@cooley.edu. And thank you all for listening today, and remember, you have the ability and right to take control of your law school's success. I hope you'll continue listening, creating a plan for success that will prepare you to achieve the dreams that you have set for yourself. Talk to you next time. Thanks for listening. You're on your way to being a law school insider. Please subscribe to stay connected and come back again next time as we speak to more students, lawyers, and employers.